The princess defeated the enemies and saved them, which was far more important than expected from Astor's Princess Elena Vasquez stepped off the transport shuttle and onto the gleaming metal floors of Kepler 7 space station. Her blue dress uniform sparkled under the artificial lights, and the golden ribbons on her chest caught the attention of everyone around her. She looked young, maybe 30 years old, with kind brown eyes and a gentle smile. The space station was huge. It floated in empty space between the human colonies and alien territories. Kepler 7 was built for peace talks and trade meetings. Ships from many different worlds came here to solve problems without fighting. Elena walked through the main hallway, carrying a small diplomatic bag. Her shoes made soft clicking sounds. On the floor, other beings moved around her, some tall, some short, some with scales, others with fur. They all stared at the human princess as she passed. "That is their representative?" asked Ambassador Thrix, a tall blue alien with 4 arms. His voice sounded surprised and a little angry. "The humans must be joking," said another alien diplomat. This one looked like a giant bird with silver feathers. "They send a child to discuss war and peace?" Elena heard their whispers but did not react. She had expected this. Humans were still new to the galactic community. Most aliens thought they were weak and simple. They looked at Elena and saw only a pretty young woman in fancy clothes. The meeting room was large and round. A huge table sat in the center with chairs for 20 delegates. Windows covered one wall, showing the beautiful stars outside. Elena took her seat at the table and placed her bag beside her chair. One by one, the other delegates entered. The Altarians came first, tall, thin beings with glowing blue skin. They moved like dancers and spoke in musical voices. Next came the Hexari, who looked like living crystals that changed colors when they thought. Finally, the Zephyrians arrived. War Prime Korath was massive, even for his species. He stood 8 feet tall and wore black armor that covered his entire body. His face looked like a cross between a lizard and a shark, with rows of sharp teeth. Scars covered his arms and neck, proof of many battles. Behind Korath came 5 more Zephyrian warriors. They all wore weapons and armor. Their eyes glowed red in the dim light when they walked. Their heavy boots made the floor shake. Korath looked around the room until his eyes found Elena. He stared at her for a long moment, then began to laugh. It was not a happy sound. "This is what the humans send." Korath's voice was deep and rough like grinding stones. "A decorated pet. Where are your warriors? Where are your wise elders?" Elena stood up slowly. She was much smaller than everyone else in the room, but she kept her back straight and her head high. "I am Princess Elena Vasquez, official representative of the Terran Colonial Union. I have come to discuss the attacks on our Outer Rim colonies." "Attacks?" Korath laughed again. "We call them raids. Your people are weak. They cannot defend their own worlds. That makes them fair targets." The other aliens at the table looked uncomfortable. The Altarian ambassador made soft musical sounds of worry. The Hexari delegate turned dark purple, which meant fear. Elena opened her diplomatic bag and pulled out a data pad. "I have evidence of what happened on New Geneva, Harmony Station, and the farming world of Green Valley. Your ships destroyed. Civilian targets, hospitals, schools, homes where families lived." She activated the data pad. Pictures appeared in the air above the table. Burned buildings, empty streets, damaged ships trying to escape. The images showed the truth of the Zephyrian raids. Children lived in these places. Elena said quietly, "Old people who never hurt anyone. Farmers who only wanted to grow food. Your warriors attacked them all." Korath looked at the pictures, but did not seem bothered. "The weak should not live in space if they cannot protect themselves. This is natural law. This is murder," Elena replied. Her voice stayed calm, but her hands became fists. "The Galactic Council has laws against attacking civilian targets. You broke those laws. Human laws mean nothing to the Zephyrian Empire," Korath said. He stood up, and his armor made metallic sounds. "We take what we want. We fight who we choose. Your council cannot stop us." The Altarian ambassador tried to speak. "Perhaps we can find a middle path. Payment for damages. maybe restrictions. On future raids, no. Korth's shout made everyone jump. There will be no payments. No restrictions. Humans are prey animals. They exist for stronger species to hunt. Elena watched Korth carefully. She noticed how his eyes moved, how he held his body. Years of training had taught her to read enemies. This alien was not just angry, he was excited, almost happy. The Terran Colonial Union offers fair compensation, Elena said. We will share our farming technology. We will provide medical supplies. We will even help build trade routes that benefit everyone. Pathetic, Korth said. You offer gifts to those who burn your worlds. This proves humans are too weak to survive among the stars. As Korth spoke, Elena felt something strange. The space station was very solid, built to last for hundreds of years, but she could feel tiny vibrations in the floor. The vibrations had a pattern. Like a heartbeat, Elena had grown up on ships. Her father was a Navy captain, and she spent her childhood learning about space travel. These vibrations meant something specific. Ships were moving nearby, but trying to stay hidden. The peace talks are finished, Korth announced. Humans have nothing to offer the Zephyrian Empire except their surrender. He walked toward the door, and his warriors followed. At the doorway, Korth stopped and looked back at Elena. You should have sent a real diplomat, little princess. Someone who understands power. Korth pulled a small device from his belt. It looked like a communication tool, but Elena noticed it was shaped differently than normal. This was not meant for talking. It was meant for signaling. Korth pressed a button on the device. Nothing seemed to happen, but Elena saw a tiny light flash green. Somewhere in space, someone had received that signal. The Zephyrians left the meeting room. The other aliens began talking quickly among themselves. Some sounded worried, others seemed angry. A few looked ready to run away. Elena sat back down in her chair. She closed her eyes and concentrated on the vibrations in the floor. The pattern was getting stronger. More ships were moving out there, and they were getting closer to the space station. The Altarian ambassador approached Elena's chair. Princess Vasquez, I am sorry the talks failed. Perhaps your people should consider leaving this system quickly. Elena opened her eyes and smiled. It was not the gentle smile she had worn before. This smile was different, sharp and dangerous. Ambassador Thrix, she said quietly, I think the real negotiations are just beginning. Outside the windows, the stars continued to shine peacefully. But Elena knew that peace was about to end. Korth's signal meant trouble was coming to Kepler 7. The question was whether the aliens on the station would survive what happened next. Elena picked up her diplomatic bag and checked its contents. Everything was still there, including some items that looked very different from normal diplomatic tools. She was ready for whatever came. Next, the first part of her mission was complete. Now the real work would begin. 20 minutes after Korth left the meeting room, alarms began ringing throughout Kepler 7 space station. The sound was loud and sharp, making everyone stop what they were doing. Red lights flashed in the hallways. A voice spoke from speakers in the walls. Attention all station residents. Unknown ships have appeared in our system. All personnel report to safe areas immediately. Elena was still sitting in the meeting room when the alarms started. The other alien delegates looked confused and scared. Some stood up quickly, knocking over their chairs. Others made worried sounds in their own languages. What is happening? Asked Ambassador Thrix, his forearms moving nervously. His blue skin had turned a darker shade, which meant fear for his species. Elena walked to the large windows that showed space outside. At first, everything looked normal, just stars and empty darkness. Then shapes began to appear, like shadows, becoming solid. One by one, huge ships dropped out of stealth mode around the space station. They were dark gray and covered in weapon systems. Elena counted them carefully, 12 heavy cruisers and one massive dreadnought. All of them had the red and black markings of the Zephyrian Empire. Impossible, whispered the Hexari delegate, turning bright yellow with shock. How did they get so close without detection? Elena knew the answer. Zephyrian ships had advanced stealth technology. They could hide from most scanning systems if they moved slowly and carefully. Korath had been planning this attack for days, maybe weeks. The largest ship, the Dreadnought, was positioned directly in front of the station. It was 3 times bigger than any other vessel in the fleet. Weapon ports covered its hull like angry eyes. This ship alone could destroy Kepler-7 in minutes. A new voice came through the station's communication system. It was deep and rough, Korath's voice. People of Kepler-7 space station, the War Prime, announced, "You are now prisoners of the Zephyrian Empire. Any attempt to escape or call for help will result in the destruction of your station." The alien delegates in the meeting room began to panic. The Altarian ambassador started making high musical sounds that meant extreme fear. 2 of the smaller aliens ran toward the door, but stopped when they remembered the ships outside. "We surrender," called out Ambassador Thrix into the air. "Please do not hurt the civilians on this station." Korath's laugh came through the speakers. "Surrender is only the beginning. You will give us all your defensive codes. You will disable your shields and weapons. You will prepare for boarding parties." Elena continued to study the enemy ships through the window, while the other delegates panicked. She was thinking like a soldier. The Zephyrian fleet looked impressive, but their formation had problems. The ships were arranged in a circle around the station, but they were too close together. If one ship exploded, it might damage the others nearby. Also, the formation was designed to look threatening, not to fight effectively. More importantly, Elena recognized these ships. She had been studying Zephyrian attack patterns for 3 years. The energy signatures, the weapon configurations, the way they moved. This was the same fleet that had attacked New Geneva Colony. The same fleet that had destroyed a hospital full of sick children. The same fleet that had burned farming settlements and left thousands of people homeless. Elena felt anger growing in her chest, but she kept her face calm. These were the murderers she had been hunting. They had finally made a mistake by showing themselves. "You have 1 hour." Korath's voice continued. "Lower your shields. Disable your weapons. Prepare docking bays for our soldiers. If you refuse, we will destroy the station piece by piece." The Altarian ambassador fell to his knees. 50,000 beings live on this station, he cried. Families with children, scientists, studying peaceful research, traitors who never hurt anyone. "Then they should have chosen their friends more carefully," Korath replied. "The human princess brought this danger to you. Blame her for what happens next." All the alien delegates turned to look at Elena. Some seemed angry, others looked sad. A few appeared ready to hand her over to the Zephyrians if it would save their lives. Elena picked up her diplomatic bag and opened it slowly. Inside were the usual items, documents, translation devices, and ceremonial gifts. But there were other things too, hidden in secret pockets. She pulled out a small black device that looked like a communication tool. But this was no ordinary communicator. It was a quantum transmitter, connected directly to the deepest levels of Terran Defense Force Command. "Princess Vasquez," said Ambassador Thrix, his voice shaking. "Perhaps you should consider what the War Prime has offered. Your people might be willing to negotiate." Elena looked up from her bag. Her gentle smile was gone. Her kind brown eyes had become hard and cold. "Ambassador Thrix," she said quietly, "there are some things you do not know about me." She activated the quantum transmitter. It made no sound, but a tiny green light began blinking. Somewhere far away, in deep space, other people were receiving her signal. "The Terran Colonial Union does not negotiate with murderers," Elena continued. "Especially not these murderers. You will get us all destroyed," shouted one of the smaller aliens. "Your human pride will kill 50,000 innocent beings." Elena stood up and walked back to the window. The Zephyrian ships had not moved from their positions. They were confident, certain that their victims had no choice but to surrender. "Tell me," Elena said to the room, "what do you know about human military ranks?" The aliens looked confused. Why was she talking about military ranks when death ships surrounded them? "Princess is a noble title," Elena explained, still looking out at the enemy fleet. "But in the Terran Defense Force, princess is also a military rank. It means something very specific." She turned around to face the delegates. Her posture had changed. She no longer looked like a gentle diplomat. She stood like a soldier, with her shoulders back and her head high. Princess means fleet admiral. Elena said, it means someone who commands multiple battle groups. Someone who has fought in 16 major engagements. Someone who has never lost a battle. The alien stared at her in shock. This young woman was not just a diplomat. She was a military commander. My full name, Elena continued, is Admiral Princess Elena Vasquez, commanding officer of the 3rd Fleet, Terran Defense Force, and I have been hunting War Prime Korath. For 3 years, outside the window, the enemy ships continued their silent threat, but Elena was no longer worried about them. She was thinking about the signal she had just sent, and the ships that would soon answer her call. The real question, Elena said with a dangerous smile, is whether Korath's fleet will survive what happens next. Our countdown had begun, but Elena was not planning to surrender. She was planning to spring a trap of her own. The alien delegates stared at Elena in complete silence. Their minds were trying to understand what they had just heard. The gentle human diplomat was actually a military admiral. The young woman they had dismissed was one of the most dangerous people in known space. Fleet Admiral, whispered Ambassador Thrix. His forearms trembled as he spoke. But you look so young. Elena finished for him. Humans live longer than most species realize. I have been fighting wars since before your planet joined the Galactic Council. She touched the quantum transmitter again. More green lights blinked in response. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, her message was being received. Admiral Vasquez, said the Hexari delegate, who had turned bright orange with confusion. If you are truly a fleet commander, where are your ships? Why did you come here alone? Elena walked back to the window and pointed at empty space beyond Korath's fleet. They are there, waiting in hyperspace. I have been using these peace talks as bait to draw out Korath's raiders. The smaller aliens made worried sounds. One of them, a furry creature with big eyes, began crying softly. You used us as bait too. You put 50,000 innocent lives at risk? Elena's expression softened for a moment. I did not know Korath would bring his entire fleet. I expected a small escort, maybe 3 ships. She gestured toward the enemy vessels. This changes everything. Outside the window, the Zephyrian dreadnought was moving closer to the station. Its weapon systems were charging, creating bright red glows along its hull. The message was clear: surrender or die. Can your fleet defeat them? Asked Ambassador Thrix. Hope flickered in his musical voice. Elena studied the enemy formation carefully. In open space. Yes, my ships are faster and better armed. But Korath is not stupid. He positioned his fleet too close to the station. If we attack now, the explosions would destroy Kepler-7. She touched her communicator and spoke in rapid human military language. The aliens could not understand the words, but they heard the urgency in her voice. A few minutes later, Elena's face became grim. My fleet commander confirms what I feared. Any direct attack would cause massive civilian casualties. The station's hull cannot survive that much weapons fire. The room fell quiet except for the distant sound of alarms. The aliens realized they were trapped between 2 fleets, and neither side could help them without destroying them. Then we must surrender, said the Altarian ambassador sadly. There is no other choice. Elena sat down in her chair and opened her diplomatic bag again. This time she pulled out a small data pad and began reading. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen. There might be another way, she said after a few minutes. Tell me, what do you know about Zephyrian honor codes? The aliens looked at each other. Ambassador Thrix spoke first. They are warriors. They value strength and courage. They despise weakness. True, Elena said, still reading her data pad. But there are specific rules they must follow. Ancient laws that even war primes cannot break. She found what she was looking for and smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a hunter who had found her prey's weakness, according to Zephyrian law. Elena said, if an enemy commander challenges the leader to single combat, that challenge cannot be refused. The outcome of the duel determines the fate of both forces. The alien stared at her in horror. You want to fight Korath alone, squeaked the small furry delegate. He is twice your size. He has armor and weapons. Elena stood up and walked to the communication panel on the wall. Korath, she said, activating the station-wide broadcast system. This is Admiral Princess Elena Vasquez of the Terran Defense Force. Silence came from the speakers for a long moment. Then Korath's rough voice responded, Admiral, you lie, little princess. Humans do not have the courage to make real warriors. I am the officer who destroyed your supply base at Rigel 7, Elena replied calmly. I am the one who captured your assault ships. At the Battle of Proxima Gate, I am the hunter who has been tracking your fleet across 3 sectors. Another long silence. When Korath spoke again, his voice was different, angry, but also interested. You are the ghost commander the prisoners spoke of. The human who fights like a demon. I am. Elena confirmed, and I challenge you to single combat for the fate of this station. Winner takes all. Loser surrenders their entire force. The aliens in the room gasped. Even through the speakers, they could hear Korath breathing heavily in Zephyrian culture. Refusing such a challenge would mark him as a coward forever. You would fight me alone? Korath asked. One small human against a Zephyrian war prime? I would, Elena said, unless you are afraid to face someone your own size. The insult hung in the air like a physical thing. No Zephyrian warrior could ignore such words. Very well, Korath snarled. I accept your challenge, but when I crush your bones, the station dies slowly. I will make sure everyone watches. When I defeat you, Elena replied, your fleet will surrender to Galactic Council justice, all of them, including you. Impossible, Korath laughed, but I accept these terms. Where do we fight? Elena looked around the meeting room, then at the large observation windows. The main cargo bay. 1 hour from now. Witnesses from both sides. Agreed, Korath said. Prepare to die, little princess. The communication ended. Elena turned back to the stunned alien delegates. Are you insane? Demanded Ambassador Thrix. Korath has killed hundreds of beings in personal combat. He is a legendary warrior. Elena sat back down and pulled more items from her diplomatic bag. Among them was a simple human sword in a plain black sheath. She had carried it to every diplomatic mission for 5 years. Ambassador, she said quietly, there are things about humans that you do not understand. We are not the strongest species. We are not the fastest. We are not the smartest. She stood up and strapped the sword to her belt. The weight felt familiar and comforting. But we are the most stubborn, she continued. When we decide something must be done, we find a way to do it. No matter how impossible it seems. The aliens watched as Elena checked her equipment. She moved with the confidence of someone who had faced impossible odds before and survived. 1 hour, she said, walking toward the door. That gives me time to study Korath's combat records and prepare my strategy. What if you lose? Called out the Hexari delegate. Elena paused at the doorway. Then you should probably start learning Zephyrian customs. But I do not plan to lose. She left the room, her footsteps echoing in the hallway. Behind her, the alien delegate sat in shocked silence, wondering if they had just witnessed courage or madness. Outside the window, the enemy fleet waited. In 1 hour, the fate of 50,000 lives would be decided by a battle between 2 warriors. Elena Vasquez walked toward what might be her final fight. The main cargo bay of Kepler 7 space station was huge. It could hold 3 transport ships at the same time. Normally it was filled with containers and loading equipment. Today, all the cargo had been moved to make room for combat. Elena stood at one end of the bay, wearing her simple blue dress uniform. She had removed her jacket and ceremonial ribbons. The sword at her side looked small and plain next to all the advanced technology around them. At the other end of the bay stood War Prime Korath. He had changed into his full battle armor, thick black plates that covered his entire body. The armor had built-in weapon systems and energy shields. Small rockets were mounted on his shoulders. Laser weapons were attached to his arms between Elena and Korath. Witnesses gathered to watch the duel. Alien delegates from the station stood on one side. Zephyrian warriors from the fleet stood on the other side. Everyone was quiet, waiting for the fight to begin. This is madness. whispered Ambassador Thrix to the Hexari delegate. Look at the size difference. Look at his weapons. The Hexari had turned dark purple again. The human female will be crushed. In seconds. Why did she do this? Elena walked slowly around the cargo bay. Studying everything carefully, she looked at the metal walls, the ceiling, the floor. She examined the loading cranes that hung from above. She noticed the electromagnetic systems used to move heavy containers. Most importantly, she studied Korth. The War Prime was massive and powerful, but Elena had read his combat records. She knew how he fought. Korth liked to charge straight at his enemies, using his size and strength to overwhelm them quickly. He had never lost a duel because he had never fought anyone smart enough to avoid his attacks. Are you ready to die, little princess? Korth called across the bay. His voice echoed off the metal walls. Elena drew her sword. It was a simple human blade, made of steel and carbon. No energy fields, no advanced technology. Just sharp metal that her grandfather had carried in an old war. I am ready, she replied. A Zephyrian officer stepped forward to signal the start of combat. This duel is witnessed by both fleets. The winner commands both forces. The loser surrenders all claims. Begin. Korth immediately activated his weapon systems. The rocket launchers on his shoulders locked onto Elena. The laser weapons on his arms began charging with bright red light. He started running toward her, his heavy boots making the floor shake. Elena did not try to meet his charge. Instead, she ran toward the side wall of the cargo bay. Korth fired his rockets at where she had been standing. The explosions left smoking craters in the floor. Stand and fight, Korth roared, changing direction to follow her. But Elena was not running away. She was running toward one of the electromagnetic loading cranes. These machines were designed to lift containers weighing thousands of pounds. They were controlled by magnetic fields and computer systems. Elena reached the crane controls and started pressing buttons quickly. She had studied the station's technical manuals during her hour of preparation. She knew exactly how these machines worked. The crane above Korth suddenly came to life. Its magnetic field activated, trying to grab onto his metal armor. Korth stumbled as the powerful magnets pulled at his weapons and armor plates. Cheating! One of the Zephyrian warriors shouted. Using available resources, Elena called back. Your leader chose the location. These machines are part of the battlefield. Korth fought against the magnetic pull and fired his laser weapons at Elena. She rolled behind a support beam as the energy blasts burned holes in the wall where she had been standing. Elena ran to another control panel. This one controlled the cargo bay's atmosphere system. She began changing the air pressure and temperature in different parts of the bay. Korth's armor was designed for normal atmospheric conditions. When Elena created pockets of superheated air around him, his cooling systems had to work harder. When she lowered the air pressure near his feet, his balance became uncertain. What is she doing? Asked one of the alien witnesses. She is turning the entire cargo bay into a weapon, replied Ambassador Thrix with amazement. She is not fighting the warrior. She is fighting with the environment. Korth realized what was happening and charged toward Elena again. This time he ignored his ranged weapons and activated an energy blade from his right arm. The weapon glowed bright blue and could cut through almost any material. Elena waited until he was very close, then activated the emergency gravity controls. The artificial gravity in that section of the base suddenly increased to 3 times normal. Korth, wearing hundreds of pounds of armor, crashed to the floor under the crushing weight. But the War Prime was strong. He fought against the heavy gravity and slowly got back to his feet. His energy blade was still active, reaching toward Elena. Elena had one more trick. She ran to the final control panel, the one that managed the cargo bay's energy distribution. With quick finger movements, she routed power from the bay's lights and life support systems. The cargo bay became dark except for the glow from Korth's weapons. But Elena was not trying to hide in the darkness. She was overloading the electromagnetic field generators. The magnetic fields around Korth became incredibly powerful. His armor, weapons, and energy blade were all pulled toward the nearest crane magnet. The metal plates of his armor started to bend and crack under the pressure. Korth tried to move, but the magnetic forces held him like invisible chains. His weapon systems began to malfunction as the electromagnetic fields interfered with their circuits. Impossible, he growled, struggling against forces he could not see or fight. Elena walked toward him, her simple sword ready. She was careful to stay away from the magnetic fields. That would affect metal objects. You made one mistake. Korth, she said, circling around him like a hunter studying wounded prey. You chose to fight in a place designed by humans. We build our tools to be used in ways their makers never imagined. Korth tried to fire his remaining weapons, but the electromagnetic interference made them spark and fail. His energy blade flickered and went dark. His rockets would not launch. Elena stepped closer. The magnetic fields were so strong now that Korth could barely move his arms. His armor had become a prison. Surrender, Elena said, holding her sword at his throat. Order your fleet to withdraw and submit to Galactic Council justice. Never, Korth snarled. Zephyrians do not surrender. Then you choose to lose consciousness, Elena replied. She pressed a final button on the control panel. The electromagnetic fields pulsed with incredible power. Korth's armor systems overloaded completely. The circuits in his helmet sparked and went dark. Without life support, breathing became difficult. Without his armor's strength enhancement, the magnetic forces became too much to resist. Warp Prime Korth, the terror of 3 sectors, collapsed unconscious on the cargo bay floor. Elena turned off the electromagnetic systems and stepped back. The witnesses stood in complete silence, unable to believe what they had seen. A human, 1/3 the size of her opponent, had defeated a legendary Zephyrian warrior without killing him. She had used intelligence instead of strength, creativity instead of weapons, and environment instead of armor. Elena looked at the Zephyrian warriors who had come to witness the duel. Your leader has been defeated according to your own honor codes. Do you accept the terms of surrender? The senior Zephyrian officer stared at his unconscious commander, then at the small human who had accomplished the impossible. We accept, he said quietly. The fleet will surrender to Galactic Council authority. Elena sheathed her sword and walked toward the cargo bay exit. Send medical teams for Korth. He will live, but he will face trial for his crimes. As she left the bay, the alien delegates followed her with expressions of amazement and respect. They had witnessed something that would be told as a legend for generations, the day a human princess defeated an empire with nothing but her mind. 2 hours after the duel ended, space around Kepler 7 station filled with new ships. Elena's fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, 20 human vessels, led by a massive battlecruiser called the Terran Pride. The Zephyrian warriors watched nervously as the human ships took positions around their surrendered fleet. They expected to be arrested immediately, some prepared for a final battle. Even though their honor code demanded they accept defeat, Elena stood on the station's main observation deck, watching both fleets through the huge windows. Beside her stood the alien delegates, still amazed by what they had witnessed. Behind them, medical teams were taking the unconscious Korth to the station's hospital. Admiral Vasquez, said Ambassador Thrix, your victory was remarkable. But what happens now? Will you destroy the Zephyrian fleet? Elena touched her communicator and spoke to her fleet commander, Captain Martinez. Hold position, but do not target the enemy ships. I want to speak with their officers first. The aliens looked confused. Why was Elena not ordering an immediate attack? The Zephyrians had murdered thousands of innocent people. They deserved punishment. Elena turned to face the room. Her expression was serious, but not angry. There is something you all need to know. Something I discovered during my investigation of the raids. She pulled out her data pad and activated a holographic display. Information appeared in the air, ship records, financial transactions, communication logs, and star charts. The Zephyrian raids were not random attacks, Elena began. They followed a specific pattern, always targeting colonies that had recently purchased new defensive weapons. always attacking trade routes that competitors wanted to control. The alien delegates studied the information carefully. Slowly, they began to see the pattern Elena had discovered. Someone was telling the Zephyrians which targets to hit, continued Elena. Someone was providing them with detailed intelligence about human defenses. Someone was making sure the raids would cause maximum economic damage. Ambassador Thrix gasped as he understood the implications. You mean the attacks were planned by someone else? The Zephyrians were being used. Exactly, Elena confirmed. The real enemy is not Korth's fleet. It is a shadow organization that profits from war between different species. They sell weapons to both sides, then arrange conflicts to increase demand. She changed the holographic display to show financial records. The numbers were staggering. Billions of credits flowing between companies, governments, and mercenary groups. The Crimson Syndicate, Elena explained. They operate across 17 sectors. They have agents in governments, trading companies, and military organizations. They make money by starting wars and selling solutions. The Hexari delegate turned bright red with anger. This syndicate caused the death of thousands of innocent beings for profit. Yes, Elena said grimly, and the Zephyrians were victims too. The syndicate convinced their leaders that humans were planning to invade their territory. They provided false intelligence that made the raids seem necessary for Zephyrian survival. Elena activated her communicator again. Bring me the senior Zephyrian officer. I want to speak with him. A few minutes later, the Zephyrian second-in-command entered the observation deck. He was smaller than Korth, but still impressive in his black armor. His name was Subcommander Vrex, and he looked ready to die with honor. Human Admiral. Vrex said formally, we await your judgment. We will accept punishment for our raids. Elena studied the alien warrior carefully. Subcommander, tell me about the intelligence your fleet received before attacking New Geneva colony. Vrex looked surprised by the question. We were told the humans were building a secret military base there. Our sources said they planned to launch attacks on Zephyrian worlds. What sources? Elena asked. Trusted informants, beings who had worked with the Empire for many years. They provided detailed scans of the human base and troop movements. Elena nodded and showed Vrex her holographic display. These informants were agents of the Crimson Syndicate. They gave you false information to trick you into attacking innocent civilians. Vrex stared at the evidence in shock. His proud warrior. Culture valued honor above all else. The idea that they had been manipulated into murdering innocents was worse than any punishment Elena could impose. We were deceived, Vrex asked. His voice barely a whisper. You were used, Elena confirmed. Just like my people were used. The syndicate wanted us to fight each other while they counted their profits. Elena walked to the center of the room and looked at everyone present, the alien delegates, the Zephyrian officer, and her own staff who had joined them. I could wrest Korth's fleet and send them for trial, Elena said, but that would only solve part of the problem. The real criminals would escape and find new victims to manipulate. She paused, letting her words sink in. I have a different proposal. Elena changed her holographic display to show a star map covering dozens of sectors. Red markers indicated known syndicate operations. There were far more than anyone had realized. The Crimson Syndicate operates in Altarian space, Hexari territory, Zephyrian systems, and human colonies. They have corrupted officials in every major government. Stopping them will require cooperation between all our species. Ambassador Thrix understood immediately. You want to form an alliance. A joint task force to hunt down the syndicate. Exactly, Elena confirmed. The Zephyrians know their methods and contacts. The Altarians have excellent intelligence networks. The Hexari are master code breakers. Humans have the military experience to coordinate complex operations. She looked directly at Subcommander Vrex. Your fleet has a choice. Face trial for war crimes, or help us destroy the organization that turned you into criminals. Vrex was quiet for a long moment, considering the offer. Finally, he spoke. What would Korth say about this alliance? Korth will face trial. Regardless, Elena said firmly, he chose to continue the raids even after learning the truth. But his warriors can choose a different path. Elena activated her communicator one more time. Captain Martinez, I want you to contact fleet commanders from all allied species. Tell them we are forming the largest anti-corruption task force in galactic history. Over the next hour, messages flew across space to dozens of worlds. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Species that had been enemies for generations offered ships and resources to hunt down the Syndicate. The Altarians contributed their diplomatic networks. The Hexari provided their computer experts. Even smaller species offered specialized skills and knowledge. The Zephyrian officers, after long discussions among themselves, agreed to join the task force. They would work under Elena's command to capture the beings who had manipulated their honor and caused so much death. As Elena watched the mixed fleet take formation outside the station, she felt something she had not expected when this mission began. Hope. Admiral, said Ambassador Thrix, you could have simply defeated the enemy and claimed victory. Why did you choose this more difficult path? Elena smiled, and this time it was the gentle expression she had worn when first arriving at the station. Ambassador, humans have learned something important during our short time in space. The best way to defeat an enemy is to make them your friend. She looked out at the ships from many different worlds, all working together for the first time in history. War is easy, anyone can destroy. But building something better, that takes real courage. The task force began moving toward their first target, a Syndicate base in the neutral zone. Former enemies now flew side by side, united by a common purpose. Elena had not just won a battle or saved the space station. She had created something new, proof that cooperation was stronger than conflict, and wisdom was more powerful than weapons. In the years that followed, beings across the galaxy would remember the day when a human princess changed everything, not through conquest or force, but by seeing possibilities that others had missed. That was the real victory.